Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the latest mission from Vandenberg Space Force Base. I'm Will Robinson-Smith. I'll be conducting our commentary for the duration of this coverage. We're broadcasting, as we always do, from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. Tonight's launch of the Falcon 9 rocket from Space Launch Complex 4 East is an important one for SpaceX, since this will be the first time that the company is launching a Falcon 9 after more than a week of standing down from Falcon flights. And in fact, they have not one, not two, but currently 3 Falcon 9 rockets that are live, getting ready to launch over the course of the next 24 hours here in Florida and over on the West Coast. Let's start from the right and we'll move to the left. Of course, you're looking at on the right-hand side of your screen, Falcon 9 getting ready to support a rideshare mission for NASA's Science Mission Directorate on board the spacecraft called SPHEREx and 4 other spacecraft that make up NASA's PUNCH mission. That flight is getting ready to lift off in T-minus 56 minutes and 43 seconds. On the far left, you have the Falcon 9 rocket at Space Launch Complex 40, which is standing by in preparation for the planned launch of the Starlink 12-21 mission, getting ready to lift off at T-minus 1 hour, 34 minutes, and 25 seconds. And in the middle of both, coming up in the evening of tomorrow, Wednesday, March 12th, is a Falcon 9 rocket at Historic Launch Complex 39A, with a Crew Dragon spacecraft on top, getting ready to send 3 astronauts, 1 cosmonaut to the International Space Station as part of the NASA SpaceX Crew 10 flight. Looking to lift off from here on the Space Coast at 7:48 p.m. Eastern, 23:48 UTC for those joining around the world. Lots of activities, lots to talk about. And the 2 missions on the left and the right that you see here on your screen, as you can tell by those timelines, we have a double header on our hands in ways that we've not really had in quite some time. So you'll see us bouncing back and forth, some overlapping boxes as we try to keep things straight and keep you apprised of the countdown timelines and the fueling processes and the missions of both NASA's SPHEREx and PUNCH flight, as well as Starlink 12-21. We're going to start, of course, with the launch of SPHEREx and PUNCH, since that is the first up to bat. Looking at a much more serene setting there at Vandenberg Space Force Base, as the thick clouds that plagued NASA and SpaceX during their launch attempt yesterday largely out of the picture. There's a 40% chance of violating weather conditions there at Vandenberg as of last update from NASA's Launch Services Program, which manages the flight of NASA payloads on board commercially available rockets. We'll, of course, give you any relevant updates as they come regarding the weather and other updates with this mission as well. Before we get much further, though, I want to thank the more than 2,600 of you who are joining with us live for what is scheduled to be a very busy and energetic launch night for us here across the country. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking the like button, sharing the stream, allow some more folks to find their way into this double header tonight. I want to thank our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, for running the quite tricky technical aspects of our launch broadcast tonight. We also have our photographer, Adam Bernstein, who's gotten all the cameras set up here at the press site in preparation for the Starlink 12-21 mission, which is going to be coming up in the midst of SPHEREx and PUNCH. If you're not already following him on X, you can find him at aburnnyc. Our photographer, Michael Kane, will be in the loop with us tomorrow, helping to cover the Crew 10 mission. He's at MD Kane Jr. And you can follow Spaceflight Now, simply at Spaceflight Now. We're also on Facebook, Blue Sky, and Threads. And in its latest update, the weather has actually improved according to NASA LSP. Taking a look back out here at Vandenberg, another vantage point. Launch weather officers with the Space Launch Delta 30 are predicting a greater than 90% chance of favorable weather for tonight's launch. That update coming within the last 30 seconds or so. And as you can see, it is a gorgeous sunset there in California. For the Starlink launch here in Florida, will also be supported with tracking assistance by our friend Pete Carsons with Max Q Productions. Taking a look at our live chat here, I want to thank our wonderful moderators for helping us out with this double launch night. Thanks to Callistia Lee, Jeff Hansen, and Rick Donner for hanging out with us this evening. If you see any of the other moderators cruise on in during the countdown, be sure to give them a big ol' Spaceflight Now hello. These live launch opportunities, especially big nights like today and tomorrow, are made possible by our wonderful channel member community here on YouTube. So thanks to folks like Ryan Snyder, That Opal Guy, Butterfly, Connie Hartman, David Ortiz, Sulfur for Lunch, James Fowley, Keeban Mama, and many others. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, that is shop.spaceflightnow.com, where at the moment you can find the Crew 10 embroidered mission patch, relevant for tomorrow's Falcon flight. Channel membership also comes with access to member-only videos here on YouTube, access to our members-only Discord server, and of course the ability to watch all of our live launch liftoff moments from here at the Cape in 4K. I've had a number of new channel members join us, so want to welcome them in. Welcome aboard to Hallow 1943, to Travel Buds 710, Kari, Maka WSJ, Brian Allers, all joining with channel membership at the pad leader level. Per Martin joining us with channel membership at the mission specialist level. And want to thank as well Psychonaut69 for gifting a membership, and Callistia Lee for gifting 10. So to our gifted members, welcome aboard to all of you. We're glad to have you with us. If you haven't already, be sure to thank Callistia and Psychonaut69 in the live chat. And we hope you decide to stick around with channel membership. Last but not least, if you have a comment or question about one of the missions launching tonight or other happenings in the realm of space or spaceflight, you can follow the lead of my honey and Shay Calandry and use the YouTube Super Chat feature. And not only will you be giving us some interesting things to talk about as we cruise on through the count, but you'll be supporting what we do here at Spaceflight Now, and that is always greatly appreciated. To that end, I want to thank my honey for a $5 super chat. One of our channel members says, here's some money for some hot tea and honey.
Propellant loading poll is open. Personnel to indicate their go, no-go status for propellant loading in EPOC section 71.4.
And as you're hearing, because this is a mission with NASA as the customer, we are getting mission audio for the duration of the fueling countdown for the SPHEREx Punch mission, which is good. So if you hear us intermittently pause, perhaps mid-sentence, it's because we are trying to not talk over the loops here and allow you to hear those relevant updates as they're happening. Anyway, thank you for the nice words, my honey, and to Shay, thank you as well. Says we appreciate your titanium trachea, Will Robinson Smith. Back-to-back nights talking us through the launches. And yeah, we're going to have to get that teapot cranked up for the next couple of nights if my voice is going to make it throughout this whole thing. But nowhere else we'd rather be than with you all supporting live coverage of 3 separate Falcon 9 launches coast to coast in a midweek launch bonanza. Currently T-minus 47 minutes, 47 seconds and counting to the planned launch of these SPHEREx PUNCH missions. As you heard from the loops, we are progressing towards the go-no-go for the start of prop load. As we're getting towards that point, let's go ahead, take a look at the countdown timeline for this mission. Generally speaking, T-minus 38 minutes is when that go-no-go poll happens, though SpaceX does it electronically, and if they feel like they're in a good position to proceed, they can take that a little bit earlier. Once prop load starts, it begins with the loading of RP-1, or a rocket-grade kerosene on board the Falcon 9's first and second stages, and liquid oxygen begins flowing on board the Falcon 9's first stage. T-minus 30 minutes is when they begin to load a cryogenic helium onto the Falcon 9's first stage. Helium is important because it's used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. Same will happen on the second stage about 4 minutes thereafter. About T-minus 23 minutes is when second stage kerosene loading concludes. T-minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds is when the strong back chill down process gets underway. That's when SpaceX is chilling the feed lines prior to second stage liquid oxygen load. And given that we are able to see the Falcon 9 rocket there at Vandenberg throughout the whole duration of the count, we'll actually get to see the so-called big vent happen here as well. We should see the so-called big vent happening at about T-minus 20 minutes and roughly 30 seconds. Now lead up to second stage LOX load to begin at the T-minus 16 minute mark. Moving right along, T-minus 7 minutes is when the engine chill down process gets underway. That involves flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps. It helps protect the engines at the base of the Falcon 9 rocket from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. About 6 minutes before liftoff, the first stage kerosene tank should be full. Then at T-minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the strong back retract sequence begin. It'll start with the clamp arms that you see just beneath the payload fairings open up. And then the transporter erector, or the strong back here at Vandenberg, reclines about 13 degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket and stays in that position up to and through liftoff. T-minus 3 minutes is when the first stage liquid oxygen tank is full. Same is true on the second stage about a minute afterwards, at which point the Falcon 9 rocket is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, as we hear the call that the Falcon 9 is in startup, control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers, and the propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. SpaceX launch director will give their go for liftoff. T-minus 45 seconds. The engine ignition command is issued at T-minus 3 seconds. And if all 9 Merlin engines are healthy and ignite, the command will be given for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 rocket for a T0 liftoff. Once again, targeting 8:10 p.m. Pacific, 11:10 p.m. Eastern, or 03:10 UTC. We're standing by for a NASA poll on the readiness of the SPHEREx and PUNCH spacecraft. Let's go ahead and listen in. we're still standing by for the NASA Launch Manager poll to begin. We'll bring that in as soon as it starts.
Okay, I'm going to talk as loudly as I can. The station that was reported with the dropouts, it's used for the Stage 2 CCAM and the PUNCH spacecraft, and I looked back at the link margin analysis, and we do have the backup station.
That's a good copy. And the backup station's HPK is what Flight Ops was telling me.
Yes.
Good copy. NASA team, this is NLM on NLMnet, and I'm going to conduct the propellant load and launch readiness poll, starting with NASA CE.
NASA CE is go.
SMA.
SMA is go.
SMD. NASA MEM.
NASA MEM's go.
LSP.
LSP is go.
Circling back to SMD.
SMD is go on NLM now.
Copy that. NASA team is ready for propellant load and launch.
And as you just...
This is the LD on countdown 1, performing a launch status verification. NLM, are you cleared to proceed with the launch auto sequence?
NASA team is ready to proceed.
LDA, is the range ready to proceed?
Range is ready, and you are clear to launch.
The propellant loading poll is complete, and we are go for propellant loading. For non-urgent conditions, no-go conditions, brief the CE or LD, and they will approve aborting the auto sequence. For urgent issues affecting the safety of the operation, operators shall call hold, hold, hold on the countdown net. Launch control will abort the launch auto sequence immediately and proceed into the launch abort auto sequence. At T-minus 10 seconds, launch control will be hands-off and relying on automated abort criteria for the remainder of the count.
And as you've been hearing through the loops, both the NASA mission management team as well as the SpaceX launch team have both polled to proceed into fueling the Falcon 9 rocket in support of the rideshare missions for SPHEREx and PUNCH. So things are progressing certainly much better tonight than they did yesterday, where long before those polls really had a chance to take place, they had to stand down because of a spacecraft issue as well as the poor weather conditions. But weather dramatically better tonight than it was last night, and it seems like all of the spacecraft are in a healthy configuration. So we are proceeding into the start of fueling, which is coming up here in about 3.5 minutes, starting at T-minus 35 minutes.
Falcon 9, thanks, are venting for propellant load.
And a good call on preparations for the startup prop load, which are less than 2 minutes away from beginning. As we're getting ready to see these missions launch, the first payload that will deploy is called SPHEREx. It's the Spectro-Photometer for the history of the universe, Epoch of Reionization, and ICE's Explorer. Quite a mouthful, so we'll stick with SPHEREx now that we've got the full acronym out of the way. As we're preparing to see the start of fueling with this Falcon 9 rocket, want to play you a little sound from the SPHEREx principal investigator there at Caltech, which is overseeing the science mission. This is James Bach talking about the high-level objectives for SPHEREx.
SPHEREx is NASA's latest Explorer mission in astrophysics, and I'm very excited about it. SPHEREx is going to answer some fundamental questions. It's going to tell us about the origin of the universe, the birth and formation history of galaxies, and the abundance of essential molecules such as water in the early stages of star and planet formation. In addition to these three fundamental questions, SPHEREx is going to measure the spectrum over the entire sky, which is going to be a bonanza for astronomers across the world. It's the first data set of its kind, and it's going to be full of interesting objects for astronomers to study for decades.
Now T-minus 35 minutes, 8 seconds and counting. Talk more about SPHEREx and PUNCH here, but we're just about to start fueling the Falcon 9.
The launch auto sequence has started.
And with that call-out tanking of the Falcon 9 rocket is now underway. If you were not with us when we talked about what that process entails, at this point they are loading RP-1, rocket-grade kerosene, the fuel of the Falcon 9 rocket, on board the Falcon 9's first and second stages. Simultaneously, liquid oxygen is now flowing on board the Falcon 9's first stage. As that super cold densified liquid oxygen fills the tank, we'll start to see a frost line form along the skin of the rocket and steadily climb up the sides as more of that tank is filled. Time now T-minus 32 minutes, 5 seconds and counting. The SPHEREx spacecraft, as I mentioned, will be the first deployed on this flight sequence, the SPHEREx PUNCH rideshare mission. It'll separate from the Falcon 9's upper stage at about T plus 41 minutes and 56 seconds after flight. That follows a brief second burn of the upper stage. I want to show you a mission animation from NASA that gives you an idea of what the SPHEREx spacecraft will look like once it's operating on orbit. SPHEREx is designed to operate for a total of about 2 years, and using a tool called spectroscopy, it will conduct an all-sky survey over the course of those 2 years, mapping the full sky about once every 6 months, and use 200 infrared wavelengths or colors to create this all-sky survey. And part of the benefit of mapping the sky 4 times will allow it to create a more robust 3D sense of the galaxy or the universe around us. To give you a sense of scale, here's what that spacecraft looks like when it was being worked on at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California, before it was fully assembled. The data gathered by the SPHEREx spacecraft is designed to help augment the work of other space telescopes like NASA's Hubble and the James Webb. Now T-minus 29 minutes, 13 seconds and counting. At this point, SpaceX is loading that cryogenic helium onto the Falcon 9's first stage to help pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. As you can see, fueling of the rocket continues well. We're about 8 minutes away from the start of the big vent as they are conditioning the feed lines prior to second stage liquid oxygen load. I want to show you one more mission animation connected to the SPHEREx payload, just to give you an idea of its pathway as it operates. It's designed to fly in a sun-synchronous polar orbit so that it always has access to the sun's energy to power its solar panels and its batteries. There is not a propulsion system on board the SPHEREx spacecraft. Researchers will assess after its planned 2-year life, assuming it's still in good condition, to see if there's an opportunity to extend its operational capabilities. And again, this is an animated representation, of course, of the SPHEREx spacecraft conducting that all-sky survey. And it will do this process 4 times as planned over the course of its 2-year operational life. Now T-minus 27 minutes and counting. Taking a look at the live chat here, I want to thank, first off, the more than 6,400 of you who are joining with us live. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking the like button, share the stream, allows more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage. And as we do have missions that are running, eventually they'll be concurrently. Let us know where you're checking in from tonight. If you're out in California or somewhere in the southwest, and we'll be able to see the Falcon 9 as it makes its ascent away from Florida, flying essentially due south. Or if you'll be closer here in Florida and able to catch the Falcon 9 rocket flying in a southeasterly trajectory. I think I may have misspoke just a second ago. The SPHEREx PUNCH mission flying due south from California. And Starlink, which in this box is on the far left, is flying in a southeasterly trajectory, with 21 Starlink satellites on board, 13 of which have direct-to-cell capabilities. The Falcon 9 in the middle is going to stay put where it is until tomorrow evening when it prepares to launch the Crew 10 mission to the International Space Station. We'll have much more to say on Crew 10 throughout the course of tomorrow as we get ready to see those 3 astronauts and cosmonaut head up to the orbiting outpost. But as you can see with the countdown clock in the upper left-hand corner of your screen, we are T-minus 1 hour, 3 minutes, 16 seconds and counting to the planned launch of the Falcon 9 from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. And we'll talk more about that Falcon fueling and its countdown as it gets closer to getting in that mode. Sharing a rideshare flight with the SPHEREx spacecraft is the PUNCH mission, which is consists of 4 different spacecraft. As a matter of fact, PUNCH stands for Polarimeter to Unify, the Corona, and Heliosphere. Want to take a quick overview of the PUNCH mission before we get to the big event here. Let's take a look at that video.
The PUNCH scientists hope to better understand the entire inner solar system, from the sun, through the corona, out into the inner solar system, and how that material impacts Earth, and to do that as a single connected system. During a total solar eclipse, we get to see the solar corona, the atmosphere of the sun, because the moon blocks out the main body of the sun, allowing us to see the much dimmer corona around it. PUNCH does this all the time. PUNCH makes artificial eclipses by blocking out the main body of the sun so that we can always see the corona. And it does this with an extremely wide field of view so that we see not just the corona that you get to see during a total solar eclipse, but also that corona as it expands out through the whole inner solar system and becomes the solar wind. It does this by using 2 different types of instruments. The first type of instrument is called the narrow field imager, and it is one of these artificial eclipses that blocks out the main body of the sun so that we can see the corona around it. The second type of instrument is called the wide field imager. The wide field imager makes an artificial horizon so that it can look far away from the sun at the very faint solar wind that is constantly bombarding the Earth. By combining the NIFI instrument and the WIFI instrument, all 4 of those spacecraft together piece out this enormous 3-dimensional, 360-degree view of the solar system. And so in this way, PUNCH is able to take high-resolution images and combine that with their global viewpoint. The PUNCH mission explores the formation and evolution of transient space weather events too, like coronal mass ejections. These can spark strong space weather events like the aurora that Joe mentioned earlier that EASY is going to study. Current instrumentation can view coronal mass ejections, but it can't follow them all the way to Earth, and it can't follow them with the kind of resolution that we need to be able to see to understand which part of the CME, which part of the coronal mass ejection is actually going to impact the Earth. With PUNCH takes advantage of polarized light to actually understand the direction that that coronal mass ejection is moving, whether it's coming towards us on the Earth or whether it's heading to the side. And this polarized light, it's very similar to your polarized sunglasses. This mission will also shed new light on shock waves. Oftentimes these coronal mass ejection cause shocks. Those shocks take benign particles and accelerate them up to energetic particle radiation, which can endanger our spacecraft and our astronauts. PUNCH also reveals the daily space weather, and this is the part that I'm so excited about. The sun is never quiet. The way that the sun makes the corona and makes the solar wind, it's constantly having little explosions. So even when there's not a big space weather event, even when there's not a big SAMI, there's still little events that constantly bombard our Earth. PUNCH is the first instrument to have the sensitivity and the resolution to be able to see that daily space weather so that we can really understand this low but constant impact on our Earth system. Lastly, PUNCH really exemplifies the Unify in our name because we are providing the global context for all of the other heliophysics missions that are flying in the inner heliosphere and also looking at the impact of these space weather events on the Earth.
Now T-minus 20 minutes, 15 seconds and counting. You can see the
Stage 2 RP1 load is complete.
big vent is beginning and a call that RP1 load has concluded on the first stage. Second stage, excuse me. This venting will continue as SpaceX conditions the feed lines at the pad there prior to second stage liquid oxygen load. As we're watching this process happen, I want to thank a few more folks in the live chat for your support tonight. I want to thank channel member Raleigh Nevels for being a member with us at the mission specialist level for 9 months now. And Raleigh says, blessing and salutations to everyone on the Spacefly Now team, and Will Robinson Smith, and to all the moderators, to the crew members who make this channel and chat possible. Thank you for the kind words. Also want to thank Mark Potocnik and Abduram Dugan for each gifting a Spacefly Now membership. Really appreciate that. And to Shay Calandry for gifting 5. So to our 7 newest channel members, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. If you haven't already, be sure to thank Mark, Abdurrahman, and Shay in the live chat if you haven't already. We hope you decide to stick around with channel membership. I also want to welcome in new channel member, Mr. Gold. Mr. Gold Ember. Joining us at the pad leader level. Peter Booth marking 10 months with us as a channel member at the pad leader level, who says, great night for a launch. Going to be raining here tomorrow night. And yeah, I was hearing that the weather in California is not going to be stellar tomorrow. So fingers crossed that things remain as they are for the SPHEREx and PUNCH missions. And we see a good liftoff coming up here in just about 18 minutes. Also want to thank Don Flea for a $10 super chat, as well as Cindy Kirkman for a $10 super chat as well, who says, thank you for bringing this to all of us. Very welcome, Cindy. Joseph Rios with a $2 super chat. Thank you, Joseph. Gilbert Goobies Castro with a $2 super chat saying, let's go, SpaceX. Hello from Santa Barbara, California. Big thanks to channel member Artemis for gifting 50 Spacefly Now memberships. Really appreciate that generosity, Artemis. Thank you for supporting us at that level. And as well to you for a very generous $100 super chat. Really appreciate the ongoing support. We'll come back to the live chat here in just a little bit. We're currently T-minus 17 minutes, 13 seconds and counting. The big vent is getting ready to wrap up here at the pad. You'll see that venting taper off and soon a call out for a second stage LOX load. Should hear SpaceX make that call coming up at about T-minus 16 minutes and 30 seconds. Meanwhile, here in Florida, we're T-minus 54 minutes,
Stage 2 LOX load has started.
40 seconds and counting. As you just heard that good call from SpaceX in California. Once again, we are still monitoring the upcoming launch of Falcon 9 rocket there at Space Launch Complex 40. Now less than 20 minutes away from the start of fueling on that Falcon 9 rocket. As you can probably suss out between the two timelines, there are going to be quite a number of mission milestones, fueling on one, flight on the other, between these two Falcon 9 rockets on either side of your screen. We've not really encountered this before, where two Falcon 9 rocket launches are falling proverbially on top of each other in quite such a direct manner, so we'll be making our call-outs as succinctly as possible, trying to keep both missions in their respective timelines straight. So bear with us. This is quite an interesting night that we have ahead of us. Now T-minus 14 minutes, 40 seconds and counting. Mentioned briefly the trajectory of the Falcon 9 rocket that's getting ready to launch here in less than 15 minutes, but let's go ahead and give you a quick overview of what it's going to look like. This Falcon 9 rideshare flight is going to be heading on a southerly trajectory once it leaves Space Launch Complex 4 East. For those in the vicinity of Vandenberg, though, you're in for a treat, as the first stage booster is going to be performing a flip maneuver and a return for a touchdown at LZ4, or Landing Zone 4, there at Vandenberg Space Force Base. So if you're close enough, you may hear a sonic boom as the booster comes back in for a touchdown tonight. Falcon 9 booster supporting tonight's SPHEREx and PUNCH missions is tail number B1088 in the SpaceX fleet. Flying for just a third time, it previously flew, as it happens, two other rideshare missions. You had the launch of the NROL 126 flight back on November 30th of last year, which supported the launch of 20 Starlink satellites, as well as 2 satellites for the National Reconnaissance Office's proliferated architecture. These are believed to be Starshield satellites. The other mission that this booster has launched previously was the Transporter 12 rideshare flight, part of SpaceX's small sat rideshare program, and there were 131 satellites on board that Falcon flight. SpaceX is working to certify its first stage boosters and payload fairings for up to 40 missions. The fairings will splash down in the waters of the Pacific Ocean a little bit further beyond the point at which the first and second stages separate. SpaceX will use the recovery vessel called Go Beyond to scoop them up out of the waters of the Pacific Ocean, bring them back into port, where they will be turned around, refurbished, and prepared for a future flight. If you happen to read our preview story for the Starlink mission coming up, here in about 15 minutes. We included some comments from earlier today from Kiko Donchev, who's the Vice President of Launch for SpaceX, where he noted that the rough sea state that SpaceX has been encountering out in the Pacific has been part of the reason that they haven't been able to turn around launches out at Vandenberg quite as quickly as they have been hoping, but says that that will improve a little bit as we get further into the year. The Pacific Ocean obviously will be very important for SpaceX as well for its forthcoming crew missions. After the return of the Crew 9 flight from the International Space Station, Crew 10 is the first that is designed to splash down in the waters of the Pacific Ocean instead of either splash down in the Gulf or the Atlantic Ocean, as has been the case for all of the preceding Falcon 9 launches with Dragon spacecraft on board, either crew or cargo. Reason for that is the trunk of the Dragon spacecraft does not burn up as much as originally estimated to, based off of initial calculations. There have been a number of instances where chunks of the trunk have made it to areas that may have been populated, so in order to make this a safer return process, all future Dragon missions are planning to splash down off the coast of California. In that way, they'll share a little bit in common with the Artemis program, since the Orion spacecraft also targets a splashdown in the Pacific Ocean after its return from the moon. We're now T-minus 10 minutes, 4 seconds and counting on this Falcon flight from California. About T-minus 47 minutes, 56 seconds on the Falcon here in Florida. For the Starlink 12-21 mission, we're just about 10 minutes away from the point at which the SpaceX launch director on the Starlink flight will make the call on the start of prop load for that mission. Meanwhile, in California, we're about 2.5 minutes away from the point at which the engine chill-down sequence will get underway. That's when SpaceX will flow a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbopumps, help to thermally condition the engines ahead of ignition coming up here in 9 minutes and some change. Now T-minus 8 minutes, 33 seconds and counting to the planned liftoff of the SPHEREx and PUNCH rideshare missions. For those who've been tracking the launch of this flight, you'll have no doubt noticed that there have been multiple delays to getting this Falcon 9 rocket off the ground. It originally had a targeted liftoff date of February 28th. Here we are on the evening of March 11th. During a pre-launch briefing with members of the press on Friday, Juliana Scheiman with SpaceX talked about some of the challenges that they had in the lead up to launch. So I want to play part of that conversation and hear about the reason for part of why this mission has been delayed as it has.
For this campaign, we had a series of integration issues that came up that I'd be happy to speak about. One of them is we fly on this mission essentially a system that's used to mitigate the environments for the rocket launch. We call that an impedance mismatch assembly, but essentially it lowers the environments the spacecraft experiences on ascent. And that system has a series of inserts, 120 inserts, that during integration we realized had become ovalized. And so we needed to pause, first understand the issue, make sure that we had a safe path to fly. And once we were able to do that and install updated fasteners, we then proceeded through that operation to continue that installation. So that initial issue related to that environments mitigation system and that integration, that was a large portion of the delay. We also ran into an issue where, to step back, the SpaceX fairing is a pneumatically separated system. And we, every time we perform an encapsulation operation, after that we make sure that the pressure in the fairing pneumatic system is sufficient to eventually be able to separate that fairing in flight. And when we perform that check this time around, after the initial encapsulation, we discovered that there was a leak in the fairing pneumatic separation system. So we needed to de-encapsulate, repair the leak, and re-encapsulate. So those are some of the integration issues that caused the delays that you saw us slip the launch date for. We also had a lot of other issues outside of our control as well. We had a weather delay when we were trying to transport the encapsulated assembly from its payload processing facility to the launch site, because we don't want to do that in high winds or bad weather, and that's what we saw the first day we were trying to do that transport. And we also were working as on a non-interference basis for this launch with the high priority range operation that was occurring. And so we did one of those days need to stand down to support the higher priority range operation that was happening. And finally, we're here today once the rocket has been appropriately reviewed on all the data that we have. We are very excited that we have gotten to LRR and are here today.
And that high priority mission that she alluded to was, we now know, the return of the X-37B military space
Falcon
plane.
9 tanks are pressurizing for strong back retract.
And as you just heard, the strong back retract sequence is about to begin, as we're now less than 5 minutes away from the planned launch of this Falcon 9 rocket after, as you just heard, many delays and challenges that have been overcome to get here. Meanwhile, here on the East Coast, we are T-minus 42 minutes, 28 seconds and counting.
Strong back retract has started.
Just about 4 minutes away from the point at which the SpaceX launch director here in Florida is making the call on the start of prop load. Four minutes and counting.
NLM, this is LD on Countdown Net.
This is NLM.
Hey, NLM, providing a status that the Falcon 9 is healthy and we're tracking no issues heading into launch. Can you provide a final verification status for your team?
NASA's go for launch.
Great, thank you.
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
Now T-minus 2 minutes 30 seconds. SpaceX is nearly finished with the fueling process on this Falcon 9 rocket. We're just awaiting second stage liquid oxygen load to wrap up here in the next roughly 20 seconds. I want to briefly thank John Trollman for a $5 super chat, one of our channel members. Stephen Bybee with a $4 super chat, and Steve S. with a $10 super chat. Appreciate all of your support this evening. An RPM for years, been a member with us for 4 months at the mission specialist level, saying can't wait to see it from Westminster, California. Glad the weather cleared up for a launch. Now less than 2 minutes to flight.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
Good call there from SpaceX. Next up, we'll see ground gas closeouts as they clear the remaining liquid oxygen from the feed lines. That's the venting you're seeing right now.
Ground gas closeouts.
Less than a minute to have to launch. Want to quickly thank Charles Briggs for gifting 20 Spacefly Now memberships. El Catch for a $5 super chat saying, "Let's go SpaceX." Watching from San Diego, working on a panel for Artemis at work today. That's very cool. Now approaching 1 minute to liftoff.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
We're now just awaiting the SpaceX launch director to make their final go for launch, and we'll be ready to see this Falcon fly.
LD is go for launch.
And with that final go for launch, we are now approaching 30 seconds to the planned liftoff of this vehicle. We're going to step back with our commentary, be with you back on the other side of liftoff.
T-minus 30 seconds.
Let's listen into this final 30 seconds and the liftoff of the SPHEREx PUNCH missions.
T-minus 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. Liftoff of the Falcon 9 space station. Go SPHEREx.
Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
Vehicle is pitching downrange.
And a good liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket to begin the SPHEREx PUNCH rideshare missions.
Power and telemetry nominal.
Just past the 1 minute mark, we'll be approaching max Q at the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle.
Vehicle is supersonic. Max Q.
Good call for max Q. We've now got a few different events in fairly rapid succession. We'll see first stage main engine cutoff, or MECO, at about T plus 2 minutes and 16 seconds. That'll be followed by stage separation.
MVAC chill.
The ignition of that MVAC engine, the Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage, at about T plus 2 minutes and 28 seconds. That call that you just heard was the thermal conditioning beginning of that Merlin vacuum engine. Because this booster is returning for a landing at landing zone 4, following the ignition of the second stage engine, then the boost back burn will begin a few seconds after SES-1. The fairings will deploy at about the 3 minute mark in just about a minute from now. The boost back burn will wrap up about 3.5 minutes into flight. So far, a nominal flight of this Falcon 9 rocket.
Main engine cut off.
Stage separation confirmed.
MVAC ignition.
Stage 1 boost back startup.
coming upon fairing separation here in the next few seconds.
Fairing separation confirmed.
And with those fairings deployed, we can see the SPHEREx spacecraft for the first time on this mission. Now a little more than 3.5 minutes into flight.
Stage 1 boost back shutdown.
There's that call for the conclusion of the boost back burn. Next up at about T plus 6 minutes and 13 seconds, the first stage entry burn will begin. As a reminder to those in the vicinity of Vandenberg Space Force Base, you may very well likely hear a sonic boom as the booster re-enters the atmosphere and prepares to touch down at landing zone 4. Now T plus 5 minutes, 7 seconds and counting into this mission. We're just about a minute away from the start of the first stage entry burn. Meanwhile, back here in Florida, we're looking for signs of the start of fueling on the Falcon 9 rocket supporting the Starlink 12-21 mission, which you see there on the right-hand side of your screen. Now approaching the start of the entry burn.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
This burn uses 3 of the Merlin engines on the Falcon 9 first stage to begin to slow the
Stage 1
vehicle.
entry burn shutdown.
With the conclusion of that entry burn, we're now awaiting the start of the landing burn, less than a minute away.
Stage 1 FTS has safed.
Stage 1 transonic.
That call you heard was the flight termination system has been safed, FTS. You can see the California coastline coming back into view on the left-hand side of your screen. Landing burn.
Stage 1 landing burn.
Starting now.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
And a good confirmation of touchdown of the Falcon 9 first stage booster. This is the first booster landing following the last Falcon flight that happened back on March 2nd, which resulted
Stage 2 FTS has safed.
in a fire that destroyed that booster, B1086.
MVAC shutdown.
With the call of MVAC shutdown, the upper stage now enters into a coast phase until T plus 39 minutes and 28 seconds, when there will be burn of that upper stage engine, lasting about 40 seconds in total, setting up the SPHEREx satellite to be deployed at T plus 41 minutes and 56 seconds.
Nominal orbit insertion.
And a good call for a nominal orbit insertion. Here in Florida, we're T-minus 27 minutes, 54 seconds and counting to the planned liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket at Space Launch Complex 40. There's quite a bit of heat distortion out here tonight, so it's difficult to discern that fueling has in fact begun, but it does appear as though we are starting to see a little bit of vapor near the base of the first stage booster. Again, that frost really hard to make out with all of the heat waves that are happening. But you could just make out that a little bit above the tree line there and the pad deck, you can see a little bit of those white waves that are in front of more of a charcoal color part of the first stage booster. That's about where we would be seeing that frost line form as the super cold densified liquid oxygen begins flowing on board the Falcon 9's first stage. And again, we are in a launch double header here, so while the SPHEREx mission is currently in flight, now T plus 11 minutes, 35 seconds and counting, we are counting down to the launch of this Falcon 9 here at Pad 40, which is set to lift off in 26 minutes and 13 seconds. Appreciate the 16,000 of you who are sticking around with us as we move in this interesting in-between period. If you haven't already, be sure to click that like button, share the stream, allow some more folks to find their way into this live double launch coverage. Time now T plus 14 minutes, 26 seconds on the SPHEREx flight. Were we still targeting a T0 liftoff of the Falcon 9 from here in Florida, we'd be about T minus 23 minutes and 18 seconds. However, it does appear as though SpaceX may have scrubbed this mission tonight, as we are not seeing enough evidence of fueling as we would be normally at this point in the countdown. We'll know more definitively within the next few minutes as we approach the point where there would be the so-called big vent, but the lack of vapor along the side of the rocket suggests that they may be standing down from a launch tonight. Once again, if you're just joining us, we have made the determination that they have scrubbed the launch of the Starlink 12-21 mission for tonight. So we're going to focus our primary energy on the mission that is still in progress, the launch of NASA's SPHEREx and PUNCH missions. You're taking a live look now in mission control there. This is the Mission Director Center there at Vandenberg Space Force Base. This is NASA's Control Center. NASA monitoring the health of 5 spacecraft on board the Falcon 9 rocket that lifted off from Vandenberg Space Force Base. An on-time departure today following a whole host of delays. Now currently T plus 17 minutes, now 18 minutes and counting. The next milestone that we're looking for, once again, is coming up at T plus 39 minutes and 28 seconds. When there will be a roughly 40-second burn of the upper stage engine, setting up the SPHEREx spacecraft to be deployed at T plus 41 minutes and 56 seconds. Now T plus 24 minutes, 50 seconds and counting. For those of you who may just be joining us and coming here for the advertised double launch, after the liftoff of the SPHEREx and PUNCH missions from Vandenberg Space Force Base, it became evident that SpaceX was in fact not fueling its Falcon 9 rocket here at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, and they are now in fact standing down and pivoting likely to their next available launch opportunity for that mission, which is coming up on Wednesday with a window that opens at 10:20 p.m. Eastern, 02:20 UTC. We're still tracking the progress of the SPHEREx and PUNCH missions, though. This being a NASA mission, we'll be able to see this all the way through to the point of spacecraft separation. We're just about 14 minutes away from the start of the next burn of the upper stage engine, which begins at about T plus 39 minutes and 28 seconds. That burn will last roughly 40 seconds in duration, and then about a minute and a half, or nearly 2 minutes, following the conclusion of that burn, we'll see the start of the deployment sequence, which will begin with the SPHEREx spacecraft, followed a little more than 10 minutes later by the first 2 PUNCH satellites, and then the second 2. I want to take a quick look at our live chat here as we're watching live telemetry of the second stage, continuing in its coast phase right now. I'm Lita with a $5 super chat. Appreciate you, Lita, who says, best place to be for love of launches. Thanks to Spacefly Now team, Will, and mods. You have my deepest gratitude. Channel member moderator Jeff Hansen with a $5 super chat, who says, go Vandy, go SpaceX, go Falcon 9, go SPHEREx and PUNCH, and Godspeed 1088, which is the tail number of the booster that launched that mission. McLovin with a very generous $20 super chat. Love the handle. Love the support. Who says, thank you for helping my mom and I watch cool nerd stuff together. Hashtag Team Quokka. Thanks for the kind words. Eduardo Haddad with a $10 super chat. Thank you, Eduardo, for the support tonight. Prior to liftoff, so Cal Gloria with a $2 super chat. One of our channel members was anxiously awaiting for liftoff from Southern California. Diana Nickel with a $5 super chat saying thank you. Eduardo Haddad with another $10 super chat. Thank you, Eduardo. And last for now, Looney Lion with a $5 super chat, checking in from Fort Lauderdale. Well, while we don't have a double header tonight, we are setting the stage for not quite a double header, but certainly a double launch day if all remains as it is now set for tomorrow, starting with the launch of the Crew 10 mission, which is set to lift off from Launch Complex 39A at 7:48 p.m. Eastern, shortly after sunset. So it should be a pretty gorgeous liftoff of that Falcon 9 rocket. And that'll be followed, if it stays where it is, by the launch of the Starlink 12-21 mission, the one that scrubbed tonight. Here's a look at those 2 Falcon 9 rockets here in Florida awaiting their departure. On the left there, you see the Falcon 9 that will support the Crew 10 flight. That's on the left, and on the right, Falcon 9 there at Pad 40.
Welcome back to SpaceX in Hawthorne, California. Megan, Mick, and I are just outside of Mission Control, where teams continue to monitor Falcon 9's second stage.
And we have a view here that we're looking at, and we're seeing that stage 2 is currently coasting near Antarctica right now. So where it needs to be, we are loving the trajectory and seeing the data that we're getting back. The Falcon 9 lifted off of Vandenberg Space Force Base about 31 minutes ago. It's carrying 2 NASA science missions, SPHEREx and PUNCH, and both are headed to a sun-synchronous orbit around 650 kilometers above the Earth.
Yeah, and what does that mean for us? That means that we will be passing over the same part of the Earth at roughly the same local solar time each day. That means that the lighting conditions are consistent for observations, which is important to SPHEREx and PUNCH. For SPHEREx, that provides a consistent illumination condition, reducing background noise from the varying sun angles. And for PUNCH, it keeps them in a fixed Sun-Earth viewing geometry, crucial for tracking the solar wind's continuous evolution. In short, this orbit allows both missions to maximize their scientific observations with minimal interference from the Earth's shadow.
Yeah, basically, SPHEREx likes the sun and PUNCH does not like the sun. So they're really
That's
riding
another way
that.
to say it.
So they're really riding that day-night line, and it's just perfect. You know, that's why again we're flying these 2 missions together. So again, we're going to gather some really great science. SPHEREx is going to map our entire universe to gather data on billions of stars and galaxies, and then PUNCH is going to study our sun to really better forecast space weather and how it affects us.
And the second stage with SPHEREx and PUNCH will coast for another about 7 more minutes before we have another ignition of the MVAC engine. And then following that, we will deploy SPHEREx first and then PUNCH's 4 spacecraft. As always, we're planning to have live views of each of those deployments starting at T plus 40 minutes.
Yes, we can't wait. So we'll see you back here soon. For now, let's send it back to the hostess at Vandenberg Space Force Base with Raquel and Farah.
Thank you so much. Turning our attention back to SPHEREx, the Space Telescope is gearing up to map the entire sky like never before. With special photon shields and an ultra-cool design, here's how it will spot hidden cosmic secrets in infrared light.
This is SPHEREx.
No, T plus 35 minutes, 38 seconds and counting. We're just a few minutes away now from the start of the second stage engine burn beginning. It'll last about 40 seconds in total. you can see the Falcon 9 second stage currently flying over Antarctica right now. For those just joining, we're T plus 37 minutes, 23 seconds and counting. Once upon a time, we would also have been about 30 seconds away from a liftoff of a Falcon 9 rocket from Pad 40. SpaceX has stood down from that launch opportunity and is now officially targeting its next launch opportunity, which is 10:20 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. That is Wednesday, March 12th. In the hours following the planned launch of the Crew 10 mission to the International Space Station. Of course, we'll have live launch coverage of both missions, with the stand down from a launch attempt of Starlink. Our focus remains on the SPHEREx mission. Right now, you're taking a look at the engine as it is in its chill down sequence prior to its second burn. As we're waiting the start of this burn coming up here in less than a minute, I want to thank a few more folks in the live chat. Our thanks to Rick St. Hilaire for a $5 super chat. Appreciate you, Rick. Larry Mask with a $10 super chat, one of our wonderful channel members. Another channel member, Deb, with a $5 super chat saying, "Woohoo, great show. Thanks, Spaceflight Now." And we're just seconds away from the start of the engine burn. Let's listen in. And we did not hear a call out for the start of the conclusion of the burn, but it appears to have been a good burn as we're approaching
Nominal orbit insertion.
And there you have nominal orbit insertion. That's what we like to hear following a burn. And we're getting ready to see the deployment of the SPHEREx spacecraft here in about 1 minute. We're about 30 seconds away from the deployment of the SPHEREx spacecraft.
SPHEREx separation confirmed.
And with that good call out, you can see the SPHEREx spacecraft now flying free. Drifting away from the Falcon 9's upper stage to begin a planned 2-year mission. If all goes well, though, could extend for some time beyond then. It will operate in this sun-synchronous polar orbit and complete an all-sky mapping 4 times over the course of its planned 2-year mission. Now, the SPHEREx mission has 3 opportunities over which they can acquire signal with this spacecraft. The first opportunity is as the spacecraft passes over Antarctica. Could happen between roughly 1 and 3 minutes after spacecraft separation. The second opportunity for acquisition of signal with the SPHEREx spacecraft could happen about 47 minutes after separation over the island of Svalbard in the Arctic. If they do acquire signal a little bit earlier than that in that first opportunity, that second signal acquisition point would be the first opportunity to send a command to the spacecraft. That's according to the SPHEREx project manager during a briefing on Friday. The third opportunity to make contact with SPHEREx would happen as the spacecraft passes over Fairbanks, Alaska, roughly 63 minutes post-separation. So a number of opportunities to make sure that they're in good contact with the spacecraft, and teams at NASA and the Jet Propulsion Lab and Caltech are monitoring closely. Currently T plus 46 minutes, 13 seconds and counting. We're less than 10 minutes away from the deployment of both of the sets of PUNCH spacecraft, 4 in total. The first two are set to deploy at T plus 52 minutes and 16 seconds. The second pair will separate from the Falcon 9's upper stage at about T plus 53 minutes and 7 seconds. As SpaceX works to regain that visual connection with the second stage of its Falcon 9 rocket, we'll put us alongside that box view of the Falcon 9 rocket that's set to launch the Crew 10 mission. You're taking a live look at pad 39A there in the skinny box on the right-hand side of your screen.
And why is it doing that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Thanks, Farah. And this question is really at the core of SPHEREx mission goals and also its design. So let me start with the why. And to explain you the why, I will use this crystal ball here. And don't worry, I'll use a crystal ball to explain the past and not to predict the future. So, but if you look closely at this crystal ball here, what you see inside, you see all kind of small filamentary structures, elongated structures that connect and intersect. Some kind of three-dimensional spider web. So this turned out to be a really good visualization or representation of how galaxies are distributed throughout the universe. And in fact, we call that the cosmic web. So what SPHEREx wants to do is make a three-dimensional map of the cosmic web over the whole sky. And the reason we want to do that is simply the fact that by making this map of the cosmic web over the whole sky, we can get very unique insight about the very first moment of the universe, when the universe was only a fraction of a second old. So that's really what we want to do. And so to get to the first part of your question, the how, so that we will do that by really mapping the whole sky in 102 colors. And so why do we want to use colors? It's very simple. So if you look at the sky, you take a picture, you will see you know exactly where stars and galaxies are. But if you want to know how far they are from you, if you really want to measure the third dimension, you need to use a color information. By using colors, you can really tell how far a galaxy is from. You can really tell the distance between you and a galaxy. And so you can construct, if you map the whole sky with these 102 colors, you can really construct all sky three-dimensional map of the cosmic web, and that's really what we want to do.
You know, and how does SPHEREx use color when mapping?
Right. So we will use to make this map. We will use what we would like to use, say, rainbow colored glasses. And so you can think when you use rainbow glasses, what's very interesting about it is that the color you see slightly is different depending on exactly where you look at. And so you could say that SPHEREx will use some kind of astronomical grade rainbow glasses that we put in front of our detectors. And so it means that each part of our detectors will see slightly different colors. And so by planning a very careful sequence of pictures, of exposures, we can really reconstruct the whole sky map in 102 colors. And that's really what we will do, that's how we will get this 102 colors that we need to make this map, this three-dimensional map of the cosmic web.
Great. Thank you so much for your insight, Olivier.
My pleasure.
Now T plus 50 minutes, 53 seconds and counting. We're less than 2 minutes away from the first two PUNCH satellites being deployed. So we have a very nice view of the Earth beneath and of the Falcon 9 upper stage Merlin vacuum engine as well.
Unify and Wi-Fi 2 separation confirmed.
And a good deployment of the first 2 Punch spacecraft. We've got one more set that's going to be flying free here in just a moment. We're about 10 seconds away from the second pair of Punch satellites beginning their journey.
Wi-Fi 1 and 3 separation confirmed.
And there goes the second set. And with that, all 4 Punch spacecraft have now successfully deployed from the Falcon 9's second stage. NASA officials say it will take about 30 minutes at this point for acquisition of signal with the Punch spacecraft.
For NASA's Launch Services Program, how are you feeling in this moment?
Well, Raquel, I'm feeling incredibly excited. Hopefully I'm representative of the team. I just left a building on North Vandenberg, the SpaceX Launch and Landing Center, where there was incredible positive energy after launch. And then I was on the phone with our NASA launch manager, Denton Gibson, on the ride down here. And we got spacecraft SEP of SPHEREx. And I could hear in the background the cheering and the yelling in that room. And I know it was replicated in the rooms here at Building 836 with all of the team present here at Vandenberg.
You can probably hear far at that point.
Yeah, probably from the parking lot out there.
Wonderful.
So tell us what's next for LSP.
Oh, gosh, what's next? Well, let's see. We have some different missions this year. So this was what we call a full-up NASA Launch Services mission, and we've got 2 more of those this year, Farah. We've got one called IMAP in September, back from the Cape.
Also
so
with some
Kennedy
ride
Space
shares,
Center.
right?
And it has ride shares on it also, yes, indeed. SWIFO and Carruthers will be the ride shares there. And then we come back to Vandenberg at the end of the year in November, and we launch another JPL mission, the Sentinel-6B mission. So we always love coming out here to Vandenberg and looking really forward to that. But also scattered throughout the year, we have what we call our Vader missions. There are Class D, more risk-tolerant missions, maybe smaller spacecraft. But the first one up will be this summer, where we're launching a spacecraft to Mars, the Escapade mission. So, and that would go on the New Glenn rocket, which is Blue Origin's new rocket that successfully launched in January of this year. So looking forward to that one. And then we have a Tracers mission just ahead of that in the May timeframe, we believe, from Vandenberg here. And then we finish up in the September, October timeframe with 2 missions that look like they're going to ride together. The Pandora mission riding with the TSIS-2 mission. So we've got across the board, big spacecraft, small spacecraft, both coasts, just a lot of excitement in Launch Services program in 2025.
Busy year for you.
Yes, very busy, but that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Yes. And
all right, Tim, thank you so much for that. We actually have an acquisition of signal update from the team at Hawthorne.
Well, we can, here we go.
All right, everyone, we are now 59 minutes, 51 seconds from liftoff. Again, we watched the Falcon 9 rocket lift off with 2 NASA missions. We had SPHEREx as well as PUNCH. We did watch all 5 spacecraft deploy from the Falcon 9 second stage. We had some great views of those, again, live. And then we are currently waiting on AOS for all 5 spacecraft. Mick, talk to us about the opportunities. You know, the spacecraft team for SPHEREx was hoping that we would be able to confirm a signal within the first couple of minutes after separation, but we did also know that's a short 3-minute pass. It's this next one that's a longer opportunity where they hope to really acquire that signal.
Yeah, their next opportunity will be over the Fairbanks ground station, and they'll be looking for checking out SPHEREx and making sure things are healthy and looking good for SPHEREx as they get into getting ready for conditioning for science mission and all. But again, we did separate them very well into a proper orbit. Things looking good. PUNCH separated, and we're about 20 minutes, I think, from getting signal for the PUNCH team, and they'll start off receiving signal for 1, and then in about an hour get signal for all 4 to verify that PUNCH is good. And so the teams will be on console monitoring that and looking for that. And I'm sure that we will hear about that through our social media stuff, through NASA and that. But I will say tonight's launch was amazing. Seeing the separation of all 5 spacecraft was great. And, you know, this has been just an absolute great day to see this launch with everything that we've gone through for this mission.
And with that, we're going to go ahead and begin to wind down our coverage as well of the NASA SPHEREx and PUNCH mission launches. Now that both spacecraft are flying free and teams will be working to acquire signal with those spacecraft. Keep up with our social channels as we provide further updates on that. And of course, busy launch day ahead tomorrow with the planned launch of NASA's Crew 10 mission to the International Space Station, lifting off from Launch Complex 39A, and then the upcoming launch after that of Starlink 12-21. Want to hit a couple more super chats here before we close things out. Channel member, moderator to the stars, Callistia Lee, with a $20 super chat saying, for Will's Tea and Halls Fund, great job tonight as always, appreciate you. And Steven closing us out with a $20 super chat. Want to thank our photographer, Adam Bernstein, for having the cameras at the ready on the off chance that the Starlink mission had launched tonight. Our thanks to our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, for running the technical operations of the broadcast. To our friend Pete Carsons for also being on standby had the Starlink mission move forward. Most importantly, want to thank you for wherever you are watching from. Certainly can't do these missions without your support and that of our wonderful moderators in the live chat, Callistia Lee, Jeff Hansen, Rick Donner. Appreciate y'all helping us out tonight. Got a very busy day ahead of us tomorrow. And actually give a last thanks, missed the super chat earlier from Miss Mustang 98 with a very generous $50 super chat. Thank you so much, Miss Mustang, for supporting us at that level. Offering some kind words regarding the USS United States, which is in the port of Mobile, Alabama right now. Wonderful ship that's approaching the point at which it will be intentionally sunken, become available as artificial reef there. So exciting for the diving community in the Gulf coming up here in the years to come. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith. Remember, be good to yourselves, be good to others. We will see you next time, folks. Got 2 missions ahead of us tomorrow. Until then, bye-bye.